Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to see who the Pale Man is. One of the most disturbing, symbolic, and enigmatic beings in modern fantasy cinema is, without a doubt, the Pale Man. Silent, motionless, and absolutely terrifying, this creature not only represents a physical threat within the world of Pan's Labyrinth, but also a powerful visual metaphor full of critique, trauma, and repression. He is not simply a nightmare monster. The Pale Man is a living allegory, a figure that embodies the horrors of dehumanized power, the moral blindness of certain institutions, and the absurd punishment that falls upon the innocent who dare to break the rules. That is why in this video I will explain in detail the history and origins of the Pale Man. I will review his appearance in Pan's Labyrinth, analyze his disturbing physical appearance, his strange personality, and, of course, his incredible known abilities and weaknesses. The Pale Man is one of the most unsettling and symbolic characters in Pan's Labyrinth, a film written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. Although his screen time is brief, his visual and thematic impact makes him one of the most memorable figures in contemporary fantasy cinema. To fully understand him, it is necessary to contextualize his appearance within the journey of the protagonist, Ophelia, and explore the multiple levels of interpretation that Del Toro deliberately left open. The story takes place in Francoist Spain in 1944, shortly after the Civil War. Ophelia, a girl passionate about fairy tales, moves with her pregnant mother to a remote mill in the countryside, where her stepfather, Captain Vidal, is leading a military operation against the guerrillas. Vidal represents the face of violent authoritarianism. Obsessed with order, obedience, and lineage, his paternal figure is cold and terrifying. Amid this hostile environment, Ophelia discovers a magical underground world when she meets a faun, who reveals that she could be the reincarnation of an underworld princess. To prove her identity and return to her kingdom, she must complete 3 tasks. It is in the second of these that the Pale Man appears. The scene where we meet him is full of tension and symbolism. Ophelia descends through a tunnel into an underground chamber that seems out of time, as if frozen in a spell. In the center is a long table filled with delicacies, fruits, cakes, meats, jugs of wine. At first glance, it seems like a scene of abundance, almost like a biblical temptation. But in contrast to the opulence of the feast, in front of the table stands a completely motionless figure, the Pale Man. His appearance is macabre. His skin is white, almost translucent, as if made of old wax or dead flesh. He is seated hunched over, his hands resting on the table, and his face empty, with no eyes in the skull. Instead of facial expression, the horror emanates from his silence and the strange placement of his organs. His eyes are carefully placed on a small plate in front of him, as if they were part of the feast. Ophelia has been warned by the faun. She must not eat anything from the table. She must retrieve a golden dagger hidden in the room and leave without touching the food. While exploring, she notices grotesque frescoes on the walls. They show this same being devouring children, his victims trapped in scenes of despair. Near him, on the floor, are piles of small bones, confirming the horrible truth. This monster feeds on the innocent. Tempted by hunger and the beauty of the delicacies, Ophelia takes a couple of grapes, and that simple act breaks the spell. The Pale Man awakens. Slowly and eerily, he stands up, takes his eyes from the plate, and embeds them in the palms of his hands, raising them in front of his face in an unnatural gesture. Now he can see, and he begins to chase Ophelia with clumsy but relentless movements. The tension skyrockets. Only thanks to a magical key does the girl barely manage to escape, while the monster remains behind, screeching frustrated, trapped in his shadowy world. Guillermo del Toro never definitively explained the origin of the Pale Man, but his design and behavior have given rise to numerous interpretations. For some critics, the Pale Man represents the repressive power of Francoism. Like Captain Vidal, he sits in front of a feast while children die, embodying the regime's brutal indifference. Both punish disobedience to rigid rules, and both feed, literally or metaphorically, on the suffering of others. Others see in him a fierce critique of the Catholic Church. The monster, passive toward the food but active toward disobedience, recalls the high ecclesiastical ranks who preached morality while benefiting from power and wealth, ignoring the hunger and misery of the poor. His extreme thinness and his placement in a ceremonial setting could allude to religious iconography taken to a grotesque extreme. There are also those who interpret the Pale Man as a more universal figure, blind bureaucracy that punishes without context or empathy. His eyes on his hands are a powerful metaphor. He only sees when he is about to punish. He has no judgment or compassion, only a mechanical reaction to rule-breaking. Finally, on a psychological level, the Pale Man can be seen as a manifestation of childhood trauma, a creature born from Ophelia's repressed fears. He represents punishment, guilt, fear of hunger, and arbitrary authority. In that sense, he may not be a real entity within the magical world, but a projection of her subconscious, like an embodied nightmare. In any case, his origin remains deliberately ambiguous. Del Toro constructed Pan's Labyrinth as a dark fable, where fantasy serves both to escape and to confront horror. The Pale Man, with his unforgettable design and brief but powerful presence, is the perfect symbol of that crossroads between fairy tale and historical terror. A monster that needs no words to communicate the deepest human fears. And now that we have thoroughly covered his story, I want to talk to you about the Pale Man's physical appearance, what we know about his personality and behavior, and I will explain his incredible known abilities and weaknesses. The Pale Man is one of those creatures that doesn't need to speak or move much to become etched in the viewer's memory. His visual design is not only intended to cause discomfort, but also to communicate, almost subconsciously, a set of disturbing ideas: decay, hunger, punishment, and emptiness. His skin is extremely pale, with a whitish, almost translucent tone, as if made of aged wax or dry leather with no trace of blood. It is the skin of something dead or something that was never fully alive. Every inch of his body conveys fragility, but also something unhealthy, as if he were a corpse preserved artificially, suspended between the world of the living and the dead. His body is long and thin, disproportionate. The arms are too long and end in bony hands, with thin, sharp fingers that resemble blades. Those hands are not designed to build or caress, but to reach out and tear apart. His posture is hunched, closed in on itself, as if trapped in perpetual stiffness, in a state of imposed inactivity. The most iconic and most terrifying detail is the total absence of eyes on his face. Where we would expect to find expression or humanity, there is only a smooth, soulless face, an almost imperceptible nose, a vertical mouth that looks like a poorly closed scar, and a broad, expressionless forehead. His eyes, on the other hand, rest on a small plate on the table, like a warning or a strange ritual. Only when he embeds them in the palms of his hands can he see. And when he raises his arms with his hands in front of his face, the creature adopts a grotesque, unnatural pose, similar to that of a predator stalking its prey. It is an image that recalls certain hunting animals, like owls or insects, but distorted by its humanity. The design of the Pale Man, created by Guillermo del Toro himself in collaboration with actor and contortionist Doug Jones, is loaded with visual references to starvation, punishment, ecclesiastical imagery, and the macabre. Every fold, every gesture, every inch of his skin is calculated to provoke repulsion, and at the same time, an unsettling fascination. What is most disturbing about the pale man is not how he looks, but how he acts, or rather, how he waits. He has no dialogue, shows no visible emotions, and makes no sound at first. His presence is marked by inertia. He seems like a forgotten corpse, just another macabre piece of furniture in the room. And yet, that apparent passivity is what makes him a latent threat. He is there motionless, not for lack of life, but because he is waiting for someone to break the rules. He is not violent by instinct, but by design. The pale man acts as a mechanism of punishment. His personality is not that of a wild monster, but of a figure that obeys a logic alien to emotion. He punishes not because he hates, but because that is his function. He reacts, but does not reason. There is no moral judgment, only compliance with rules. In this sense, many analysts describe him as a symbolic judge, an entity that represents cold, unquestionable, and impersonal authority. He does not argue. He does not forgive. He only waits for someone to fail, to then intervene with terrifying violence. His punishment is disproportionate, with no possibility of redemption. His mechanical nature and absolute indifference to suffering make him a powerful metaphor. He can be interpreted as the embodiment of irrational law, punishment without context, power that does not need to justify its existence. In fact, his initial inactivity can be seen as a moral trap. He invites rule-breaking only to make his later reaction more cruel. There are also those who see him as a symbol of internal repression. In this reading, the pale man does not punish for pleasure, but because he is programmed to do so. His existence revolves around control. He is a reflection of systems that punish disobedience not for the harm it causes, but because daring to say no is, in itself, the sin. At first glance, the pale man seems weak. His thin body, dragging gait, and almost skeletal appearance could deceive the unsuspecting, but behind that seemingly fragile figure lie lethal capabilities, as strange as they are terrifying. Despite his malnourished physique, he possesses enormous strength. He can catch and lift his victims with one hand, crush them, or devour them without showing the slightest effort. He does not need speed or strategy. His touch is certain death. His vision is equally unique. By placing his eyes in the palms of his hands, he acquires a different, almost animal sensory perception. He does not see like humans do. He detects movement, presence, and direction, which makes him a peculiar predator guided by direct but fleeting visual stimuli. He does not search, he stalks. Beyond his physical ability, his greatest power is psychological. The presence of the pale man generates a silent panic in those who face him. He does not speak or make sounds, but his mere appearance imposes an aura of absolute fear. Many, like Ophelia, do not flee immediately, not out of bravery, but paralysis, as the body freezes before him. Furthermore, the space he inhabits seems magically or symbolically linked to his existence. That underground chamber is not just his refuge, but his throne. Within it, the rules change. The environment itself seems altered, frozen in time, as if his energy corrupts reality. Crossing that door is entering a domain where the pale man has the final word. But, like every monster, even the most fearsome, the pale man also has cracks. His power, though terrifying, is limited by a series of clear restrictions that make him both predictable and vulnerable if one understands his logic. Without the eyes inserted in his hands, he is completely blind. He literally cannot perceive his surroundings. This creates moments of extreme weakness. For most of the time, he is inert, and if his eyes are taken away or their use interrupted, he becomes practically defenseless. His mobility is limited. His movement is slow, clumsy, and inefficient. He cannot run or chase quickly. making him unable to catch victims who manage to stay calm and move fast. His threat depends on fear, not pursuit. We never see him leave the room he inhabits. Whether due to physical, mystical, or symbolic limitations, the Pale Man seems bound to the place. He is a monster of his environment, a guardian who cannot cross the boundaries of his own prison, turning the space into a trap, but also a cage. Finally, perhaps his greatest weakness is his obedience to a set of invisible rules. He does not attack on impulse or act without reason. He only activates when someone, like Ophelia, breaks his most basic rule: not to touch the food. That initial passivity is both his terror and his Achilles heel. As long as the rule is respected, the monster sleeps. And this is all we know so far about the Pale Man, one of the most unsettling and symbolic creatures in fantastic cinema, born from the brilliant mind of Guillermo del Toro in Pan's Labyrinth. His fragile yet lethal figure, his terrifying silence, and that paralyzing presence of fear make him a monster that goes beyond the physical, representing something much deeper: repression, punishment, and the horror that lurks in the shadows of power. Now I want to know what you think. Were you already familiar with the Pale Man? What feelings does his image and story evoke in you? Do you believe there is a metaphor behind this creature that remains relevant today? Leave me your answers and reflections in the comments. I love reading each one and understanding how we connect with these complex characters. As always, thanks for staying with me this far. I really appreciate it. If you liked this video, don't forget to share it to help the channel grow, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.